Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams, who looks inside, awakes." Today I ask you, are you ready to awaken? The child woman archetype is not just a concept in psychology, it's a mirror into the deepest corners of your own soul. In her, innocence and power collide, daring you to confront what you fear and claim what you've forgotten. This is your invitation to step into the shadows and discover your truth. Carl Jung often reminded us that the psyche speaks in images, and among the many archetypes he explored, the child woman is one of the most paradoxical and arresting. She exists within the tapestry of Carl Jung's feminine archetypes, yet she defies the simple categories we might want to place her in. To understand her, we must look beyond surface appearances, because she is not just an idea or a literary character. She is a living psychological pattern that manifests in dreams, myths, relationships, and even the quiet recesses of our inner life. Her paradox lies in the fact that she embodies both innocence and potency. She wears the face of youth and vulnerability, yet within her is a hidden magnetism, a gravitational pull that draws others toward her in ways they cannot explain. Carl Jung's work on archetypes was never just academic. He saw these patterns as energies within the collective unconscious, energies that live in every human being, shaping our perceptions, emotions, and behaviors without our conscious consent. The child woman in this sense is a messenger from those deep layers. She comes to us clothed in fragility, but this fragility is deceptive. It is not weakness, it is a kind of unguarded openness that disarms those who encounter her. Her power is subtle, operating in the realm of suggestion, allure, and the instinct to protect or possess. In our modern culture, it is easy to misunderstand this archetype, to reduce her to stereotypes of naivete or dependence. But Carl Jung would urge us to resist such simplifications. The child woman does not exist to be explained away, she exists to be integrated. She asks us to see that innocence can hold as much influence as experience, and that the appearance of weakness can conceal deep psychological potency. She stands as a reminder that human beings are never only what they seem, and that the unconscious often hides its most potent forces in the least expected forms. To meet the child woman archetype in one's own psyche is often a disorienting experience. In dreams, she might appear as a young girl with eyes that seem older than the world itself, or as a playful yet mysterious presence who cannot be fully grasped. In waking life, she may be projected onto real people, perhaps a partner, a public figure, or even a stranger, whose innocence stirs something both tender and unsettling in us. This reaction is not about them as individuals, it is about the image they awaken in us, the archetypal energy they carry that speaks directly to the unconscious. Carl Jung taught that every archetype has both a light and a shadow. In her light aspect, the child woman embodies purity of heart, receptivity, and the ability to inspire protection and care. She represents the uncorrupted part of the psyche that still believes in wonder and possibility. But in her shadow aspect, she can manifest as an agent of stagnation, holding the psyche in a state of perpetual immaturity, or using her vulnerability as a form of manipulation. This is why Jung's concept of individuation, the process of integrating all parts of the self, is essential when working with this archetype. Without integration, one risks either over-identifying with her innocence or falling victim to its hidden shadow. In relationships, the child woman can provoke powerful dynamics. For those who meet her energy in another person, there is often an instinctive urge to protect, guide, or even dominate. This can lead to imbalances, if not recognized consciously. For the person embodying her, there can be a temptation to remain in the comfort of being cared for, rather than stepping into full maturity and self-responsibility. Jung's work helps us see that neither role is inherently healthy or unhealthy, it is the unconsciousness of the dynamic that breeds dysfunction. Awareness allows for transformation, where the child woman's gifts can be preserved without falling into her traps. Culturally, she appears in countless myths and stories. In fairy tales, she might be the maiden rescued from danger, yet she often holds a secret that changes the hero's fate. In literature and film, she appears as the ingenue, the young woman whose apparent simplicity hides depths the other characters cannot anticipate. Jung would point out that these recurring images are not just entertainment, they are expressions of the psyche's attempt to make sense of this archetypal energy. They endure across centuries because they speak to something timeless within us. In personal growth, encountering the child-woman archetype can be a turning point. For some, she represents the part of the self that has been neglected or shamed, the inner child who still longs to be seen and loved without condition. For others, she is a challenge, a call to balance the tenderness of innocence with the strength of maturity. Jung's approach invites us to dialogue with her image, to ask what she needs, what she fears, and what she has to teach. This process can reveal hidden wounds as well as untapped strengths. One of the most profound lessons she offers is that power does not always roar. Sometimes, it whispers. The child woman teaches that influence can be exerted through openness, that disarming another's defenses is itself a form of strength. This challenges modern notions of power as something aggressive or overt. Jung understood that the psyche is not governed only by force, it is equally shaped by what draws us in without our awareness, what captivates us through beauty, vulnerability, or mystery. When we honor the child woman in our own psyche, we begin to integrate her gifts, the ability to inspire, to trust, to see the world with fresh eyes. But we also take responsibility for her shadow, recognizing when innocence becomes a disguise for avoidance, or when receptivity turns into passivity. Jung's work reminds us that the goal is never to destroy an archetype, but to bring it into conscious relationship with the rest of the self. In doing so, we move closer to the wholeness that is at the heart of individuation. The child woman, as Carl Jung might say, is both a mystery to be explored and a mirror reflecting our own depths. She is proof that the psyche's most powerful forces often come in the most delicate forms, and that to truly understand them, we must be willing to see beyond appearances and into the living reality of the soul. Carl Jung often emphasized that the unconscious is not a wasteland of forgotten memories, but a living, breathing realm filled with dynamic forces that shape our lives. Among these forces are what he called the shadow feminine archetypes, energies within the collective unconscious that embody the repressed, feared, or misunderstood aspects of femininity. Within this shadowed domain, the child woman archetype takes on a striking role. She is not the gentle muse or the nurturing mother, she is the elusive, enigmatic presence whose fragility and innocence conceal a potent, often unsettling power. Jung saw archetypes as universal patterns, yet each manifests differently depending on the individual psyche, and the child woman's shadow aspect can be as captivating as it is dangerous. When Carl Jung described the anima, the inner feminine of the male psyche, he spoke of its many stages of development, from the sensual to the spiritual, from the mysterious to the wise. The child woman belongs to an early, more instinctual phase of this anima, where the feminine is experienced as young, innocent, and seemingly dependent. Yet beneath this surface lies an unconscious magnetism, a capacity to influence and even dominate by evoking protective instincts or desires. This is not the domination of overt strength, but of subtle influence, working through emotion, vulnerability, and allure. Jung understood that these qualities, when left in the shadow, can unconsciously manipulate both the one embodying them and those responding to them. In myths, we often encounter figures who seem helpless yet wield extraordinary influence over the fate of others. They may be princesses, in need of rescue, maidens pursued by kings, or fragile beings whose very survival depends on the hero's actions. These stories are not merely romantic fictions, they are symbolic enactments of a psychic truth that Jung explored, that what appears powerless can in fact hold sway over the strongest forces. The child woman, when seen through the lens of shadow feminine archetypes, teaches that innocence itself can be a mask, and that the line between purity and power is often blurred in the depths of the unconscious. In the psychological realm, meeting the child woman's shadow can provoke discomfort. For the individual who embodies her unconsciously, there is a temptation to remain in a dependent state, avoiding the challenges of autonomy and responsibility. This is not always intentional, rather it is the archetype acting through them, shaping behaviors and relationships in ways that keep them tethered to others for protection, guidance, or validation. For those who encounter this archetype in another, there is the risk of falling into savior patterns, of assuming a role of caretaker or rescuer without recognizing the underlying dynamics at play. Jung's framework makes it clear that these patterns are not about blame but about awareness. Only by bringing them into consciousness can they be transformed. Carl Jung often warned about the dangers of projection, the tendency to see our own unconscious material in others. The child woman's shadow thrives on projection. She may evoke in others the image of an idealized innocence or a perfect vulnerability that needs sheltering. But this image is rarely the whole truth. When one projects onto the child woman, one may be responding not to the real person, but to an inner figure that has been shaped by personal history, cultural conditioning, and archetypal forces. Recognizing this projection is essential if we are to relate to the archetype in a balanced and conscious way. One of the most challenging aspects of working with shadow feminine archetypes, like the child woman, is that they are deeply entangled with desire, protection, and power. In relationships, this can lead to patterns where one partner unconsciously plays the role of protector, while the other plays the role of the protected. On the surface, this may seem nurturing, but over time, it can stunt the growth of both individuals. The one who protects may feel burdened, while the one who is protected may feel powerless to step into maturity. Jung's teachings suggest that the solution is not to reject the archetype, but to integrate its gifts while shedding its unconscious limitations. In dreams, the child woman's shadow may appear in unexpected ways. She might be portrayed as a delicate figure in a dangerous place, or as someone whose vulnerability draws the dreamer deeper into unfamiliar territory. Jung taught that dreams use symbolic language to reveal aspects of the psyche we have not yet acknowledged. The presence of the child woman in a dream can signal an unintegrated part of the self, one that is capable of beauty and inspiration, but also of entanglement and stagnation, if left in the shadows. From an educational perspective, understanding the child woman within the shadow feminine archetypes requires us to hold two truths at once. First, that the qualities she represents, innocence, openness, receptivity, are valuable and necessary aspects of the psyche. Second, that these same qualities can become tools of unconscious influence when used to avoid personal growth or to control others indirectly. Jung's concept of individuation invites us to work with both aspects, cultivating awareness so that these qualities can serve rather than dominate the personality. Carl Jung believed that every archetype seeks expression and balance. The child woman's shadow is no different. She wants to be seen, not as an object of rescue or possession, but as a vital part of the psyche with lessons to teach. She reminds us that the feminine is not always expressed in obvious strengths. Sometimes it is expressed in the quiet power of attraction, in the ability to inspire action without lifting a hand. But she also warns that when this power remains unconscious, it can entrap both the one who holds it and the one who responds to it. To engage with her consciously is to step into a more nuanced understanding of femininity, one that embraces complexity over simplification. Jung's work shows us that the child woman in her shadow form is not an enemy to be vanquished, but a figure to be understood. She reflects the reality that the psyche is a tapestry of contradictions, and that true wholeness comes not from rejecting the parts we find uncomfortable, but from learning how to live in dialogue with them. By doing so, we transform the subtle, often hidden power of the child woman into a source of inspiration, growth, and deeper self-knowledge. Carl Jung often spoke about the tensions that live within the human psyche, the opposites that create the friction necessary for growth. When we examine the psychological meaning of the child woman archetype, we see one of the most compelling and complex of these tensions, the pull between dependence and autonomy, the interplay of innocence and seduction. This archetype is not a flat image, it is a living paradox, one that Jung would have described as a symbol pointing towards something that cannot be expressed in purely rational terms. To encounter her is to encounter a part of the psyche that resists resolution, yet demands integration. In Jungian psychology, an archetype like the child woman is not simply a personal trait or an isolated behavior. It is a universal pattern embedded in the collective unconscious, present in every culture, appearing in myths, fairy tales, and dreams. The psychological meaning of the child woman, therefore, transcends individual biography, though it inevitably takes on the coloring of one's personal history. She embodies youth, vulnerability, and the allure of potential, but she also carries with her the capacity to influence, to captivate, and to evoke deep, instinctive responses in others. This is why Jung understood her as both a gift and a danger. She can inspire the noblest instincts in those she encounters, yet also awaken desires and impulses that lead to entanglement and imbalance. Her dependence is one of her defining features, but it is never purely literal. It can be emotional, spiritual, or even symbolic. The child woman often represents that part of the psyche that seeks guidance, reassurance, and protection, yet hesitates to step fully into independence. In some cases, this dependence mirrors unresolved aspects of the inner child, wounds carried from early life, places where one's growth was stunted or one's sense of safety undermined. Jung would say that these unresolved elements lie in the personal unconscious, but they are animated and amplified by the archetypal energy she represents. Yet dependence is only one side of her nature. The other is seduction, not necessarily in a sexual sense, but in the deeper psychological sense of drawing others toward her, of evoking in them the desire to nurture, to protect, or to claim. This is a subtle, often unconscious power. It is the power of what is incomplete to invite completion, of what is fragile to summon strength from others. Jung understood that seduction, in this context, is not inherently negative. It is an archetypal dynamic that can inspire great acts of care and creativity. But when it operates unconsciously, it can become manipulative, binding others in roles they did not choose, or keeping both parties locked in a cycle that prevents genuine growth. The tension between innocence and seduction is perhaps the most difficult to reconcile. The child woman's innocence is real. She does embody openness, wonder, and a lack of cynicism. But innocence in the archetypal realm is not synonymous with harmlessness. It can be profoundly influential. People are often disarmed by innocence. They lower their defenses. They give more of themselves. This is why Jung warned that the most potent forces in the psyche are often those that appear weakest on the surface. The child woman's innocence can invite deep trust, but when paired with the unconscious undercurrents of seduction, it can also create situations where boundaries blur and clarity dissolves. From an educational standpoint, it is important to recognize that these dynamics are not about moral judgment. Jung's psychology does not frame archetypes as good or bad, rather they are energies that can be expressed in ways that are either conscious and life-giving or unconscious and destructive. The child woman archetype calls us to examine where we stand in relation to dependence and autonomy in our own lives. Are we holding on to roles that keep us in a place of safety but limit our growth? Are we responding to others out of an unconscious pull toward their innocence, without seeing the whole person? These are the kinds of questions Jung would encourage us to ask. In relationships, the interplay of dependence, innocence, and seduction can create powerful bonds, but also traps. One partner may feel a deep need to protect and guide, while the other may feel both comforted and constrained by this dynamic. Over time, such relationships can become imbalanced if the underlying archetypal forces are not acknowledged. Jung would see this as an opportunity for individuation, for both individuals to bring the pattern into consciousness, to understand what it reflects about their own inner worlds, and to make choices that honor growth for both. Dreams often reveal the psychological meaning of the child woman in ways waking life cannot. She may appear as a young girl at a crossroads, as someone inviting the dreamer to follow her into unknown territory, or as a figure in need of rescue. In Jung's method, these dream images are not to be taken literally, but as symbolic representations of inner states. A dream of rescuing the child woman might point to one's own neglected vulnerability that is asking to be acknowledged and protected. A dream where she resists rescue might suggest the part of the self that is reluctant to leave the safety of innocence, even at the cost of growth. Culturally, this archetype has a long history. From ancient myths to modern films, the child woman appears in many guises: the maiden in need of guidance, the ingenue, whose presence transforms those around her, the fragile figure, whose very being inspires action. Jung would note that these recurring images persist because they speak to something deeply human. Our recognition of potential unformed, our instinctive responses to vulnerability, and our fascination with the space between childhood and maturity. Ultimately, the psychological meaning of the child-woman archetype is about integration. She reminds us that dependence is not inherently weakness, and that autonomy does not mean abandoning our capacity to receive care. She teaches that innocence can coexist with power, and that seduction can be transformed into inspiration when brought into the light of consciousness. Jung's vision was never to strip these archetypes of their complexity, but to engage with them fully, to understand that the tensions they create are not obstacles to growth, but the very conditions through which growth becomes possible. The child woman, in this sense, is not simply an archetype to be studied, but a living presence in the psyche, one that challenges us to hold paradox, to honor vulnerability, and to step into maturity without losing the openness that makes us human. Carl Jung believed that archetypes are not static images, but living forces in the psyche, shaping our behaviors, desires, and perceptions whether we are conscious of them or not. The child woman archetype is no exception, and her symbolism in Jungian psychology is among the most paradoxical and revealing. She exists as both a mirror and a riddle, a figure who invites us to reconcile two seemingly contradictory truths: that the vulnerable may be the most dangerous, and that the dangerous may hide in the vulnerable. This tension is not accidental, it is central to her nature, and understanding it can illuminate profound truths about human relationships, inner growth, and the shadowy depths of the unconscious. When Jung spoke of archetypes, he often described them as psychic patterns that come to life in images, myths, and personal experiences. The child woman's archetypal symbolism draws on the universal image of youth, fragility, and unformed potential. At first glance, she appears harmless, open, receptive, and untouched by the complexities of maturity. Yet Jung would caution us against taking such an image at face value. Archetypal symbols are never one-dimensional. In the child woman's apparent weakness lies an undeniable power, the ability to inspire, to draw in, and to shape the actions of others without overt force. This is why Jungian psychology insists on the necessity of symbolic literacy, the ability to see beyond the surface of an image to the deeper psychic currents it represents. The child woman is a perfect example of this. Her vulnerability acts almost like a gravitational pull on the unconscious of those around her. People may feel compelled to protect her, guide her, or even control her, often without realizing that their reactions are being driven by an archetypal energy rather than purely personal feelings. In this way, the child woman's power is indirect but potent, emerging not from action, but from the responses she evokes. Her symbolism also encompasses the reality of danger and innocence. This is not danger in the sense of malice or intentional harm, but in the psychological sense that innocence can blind us to the deeper motivations of ourselves and others. Jung understood that when we idealize innocence, we project onto it qualities it may not actually possess, creating a gap between perception and reality. In this gap, misunderstandings, emotional entanglements, and even exploitation can take root. The child woman's archetypal image reminds us that the things we most wish to protect can also be the very things that challenge and transform us in unexpected ways. In the symbolic language of dreams and myths, the child woman often appears at thresholds: a young girl on the edge of a forest, a maiden in the presence of a powerful king, a fragile figure surrounded by forces she does not fully comprehend. These threshold images are significant in Jung's work because they represent moments of transition, where the old self is being left behind but the new self has not yet emerged. The child woman's vulnerability, at such moments, is part of her symbolic essence, but so too is her ability to influence the direction of the journey. Those who meet her, whether in dreams or waking life, are often moved to act, sometimes to rescue, sometimes to possess, sometimes to learn. The danger in vulnerability is that it can attract both genuine care and opportunistic control. Jungian psychology would frame this not as a moral failing of the archetype, but as an inherent property of psychic energies that have not been made conscious. When we are unaware of how the child-woman symbolism operates in our own psyche, we may either over-identify with her, clinging to the safety of being cared for, or become unconsciously drawn into relationships where we play the role of her rescuer. In both cases, the archetype is in control, rather than the individual. The mirror function of the child-woman archetype is equally important. She reflects back to us aspects of our own inner life that we may not have acknowledged, our own longing for protection, our own reluctance to step into full independence, or even our own ability to influence others without realizing it. Jung saw archetypes as both internal and external realities. We meet them in ourselves and in the people around us. The child-woman, in her symbolic form, can therefore act as a catalyst for self-examination, forcing us to confront our assumptions about power, weakness, and agency. Culturally, her symbolism has been woven into countless stories, from ancient myths to modern films. She appears as the ingenue, whose mere presence changes the trajectory of the hero's life, or as the innocent figure whose survival becomes the central quest. These recurring patterns endure because they resonate with the archetypal structure of the psyche. Jung would point out that their persistence across time and culture is evidence that the child-woman symbolism is not a product of any single society, but a reflection of something innate to human nature. The key, from a Jungian perspective, is integration. Symbols like the child-woman are not meant to be worshipped or feared. They are meant to be understood and brought into balance within the personality. This means acknowledging both her vulnerability and her power, her potential for inspiration and her potential for entanglement. When we integrate her symbolism consciously, we can preserve the openness and receptivity she represents, while also cultivating the autonomy and self-awareness needed to avoid becoming trapped in her shadow. Jung's vision of individuation, the process of becoming whole, depends on our willingness to engage with symbols like the child-woman in their full complexity. She is a reminder that the psyche is not organized around simple binaries of good and bad, strong and weak. Instead, it is a dynamic interplay of forces, each with the potential to heal or to harm, depending on how consciously we relate to them. By understanding the child-woman's archetypal symbolism, we learn that vulnerability and danger are not opposites, but intertwined realities, each revealing something essential about the human experience. In this way, she challenges us to grow beyond our initial impressions, to see with the eyes of the soul rather than the eyes of habit, and to recognize that in the realm of the psyche, what appears most fragile may carry the deepest power. Carl Jung taught that the journey toward wholeness is not a path of avoiding the shadows, but of walking through them with awareness. The child-woman archetype, in all her paradoxes, is one of the most evocative guides on this path. She shows us that innocence and potency, dependence and autonomy, attraction and caution, are not contradictions to be solved but living tensions to be embraced. Her light inspires wonder, trust, and openness. Her shadow warns of unconscious entanglement and the seduction of staying small. In her, we see how vulnerability can shape destiny, how subtle influence can rival overt strength, and how the deepest truths often come clothed in the most delicate forms. To understand her is to better understand ourselves, the parts we hide, the power we underestimate, and the wholeness we are called to claim. In facing her, we are invited to awaken, to integrate, and to meet the psyche, not as a puzzle to be solved, but as a living mystery to be honored.